Sean with the driver's perspective, and I know there was a little bit of a break there between videos, but I'm back at it again, and it's time to get the Triumph ready for the racetrack. I have 3 weeks until I'm going to Auto Club Speedway with fast track riders, and that means I really want to get the bike serviced, prepped, and install my last few mods that I picked up from the dealership. So this video is going to be covering how to install the official OEM Triumph frame sliders, and they're a really well-made piece. They're made from a nice hard nylon, come with all the hardware you need, and install looks pretty simple except for one bolt. I don't really know how I'm gonna get to the nut actually in the back of this bolt that holds up the engine, but you can see how I struggle along, and I'm gonna do something a little bit different for this install. I want to wear the GoPro on my forehead so that way you can actually see what's going on instead of just a off in the distance view. So let me know what you think about that and we'll see how it goes. Let's get started on this install. You don't need too many tools for it. You need a T50 Torque socket, which is probably the most unique thing required for this, but most hardware stores have Torx bits now. You need a 14mm wrench. A Torque wrench is suggested, but you know, optional if you're an experienced mechanic, and that's it. It comes with all the hardware like I said, so it shouldn't be too difficult, but every time I always say that, it always turns out to be difficult, and I am definitely worried about that nut like I said, but let's just jump into it and see how it goes. One last thing, Triumph does have instructions for every single accessory that they sell, so you can go online, type in the part number, and you'll have a really good diagram and installation guide. It also tells you which bolt goes where, and in this case there's bolts with different lengths, so rather than have to struggle and figure that out, save yourself some time and get one of these. Let's hop into it. First we need to remove this bolt, start installing the frame slider, and then we have to remove this bolt. And behind this bolt there's a 14mm lock nut, which you can't see, but it's all the way back there, so I don't know how I'm going to get to that yet. So rather than disassemble this, get this started, and then be stuck not knowing what I'm gonna do to get this off, I actually wanna figure out how I'm gonna get this nut off now, because that's the more difficult one. So that's just how I operate when I'm in the garage. So first, grab my 14mm, and let's just see if I can even get to it. I think I wanna take this radiator off this bracket down here, which looks like a 10mm. So that way I can get to it a little bit easier. I think that'll give me the clearance I want. Aha, there we go. Okay, so that's gonna give me more clearance for sure. Oh, will we look at that. All the room we need. Now, because I'm so close to the radiator here with a wrench, I'm going to get a rag to stuff right here, so that way I don't run the risk of damaging this radiator with the wrench, because that would also be a bummer. So let's grab a rag, pop that right there, and we'll get started with the install. So first we got to start by loosening this. Ooh, that was tight. Some anti-seize. Now they don't mention anti-seize, but that would have been a really good idea actually. So this bolt is a little bit longer. Thankfully the factory was quite generous in their use, so I'll be able to just reuse what was on there. Now the instructions say thread this in, but don't do it tight. Just tight enough to hold it in place with the bolt bottomed out, but no more, because we need to loosen the other one to start this install. Now it is a lock nut on the back, so do expect some resistance as you turn initially, because it is a oblong nut. So it just basically means it's going to be hard to get out until it's all the way out, if you haven't dealt with one of these before. Alright, so original hardware out. And again, this is a little bit longer than the old one. Everything goes through, fill behind there. Now these bolts surprisingly don't need to be that tight. They call for a 48 Newton meter spec, which is roughly 36 foot-pounds. So if you don't know what that feels like via arm, get your torque wrench. You want to make sure you tighten these up in a somewhat even manner. it is holding the engine in, so you do want to make sure it's tight enough for that, but nothing more than that. Crank on this one more time, and that is it for this side. Not too bad of an installation. Not too bad. Looks pretty good. Nice and beefy, good nylon protection. And what I really like about this OEM accessory is it just blends in. Some frame sliders are pretty darn ugly and there's no way to get away from that. So I really like how this blends in. It goes with the lines of things really well. And I think it's gonna look really good once it's all done. Let's move to the other side and get it going. Now for the left-hand side of the bike, there is a little bit of a difference. You do have these two spacers right here, and the instructions, again, tell you exactly where the stuff goes, so you don't really have to guess, which is, again, the good part. So we have a really long bolt here. I believe this is 150 millimeters, and then we also have, well, I'm sorry, this is the 150 millimeter bolt, and this is going to be the 100 millimeter bolt, so pretty easy to tell those two apart. So I didn't go through this installation ahead of time, and I did that on purpose because I really wanted to show what it's like just installing it without having a pre-planned video that you always see, because it's these struggles that you go through as you work on things that kind of make this hobby what it is. So, you know, it's a shame that people don't show that more and really showcase how you got to get through it. So I just got to read these instructions. It's all about leverage, kids. So that's as this goes on. I'm just surprised that there's a spacer here. I would not have anticipated that on this side. But I suspect it's due to how far this sticks out compared to the other side. Yep, that's absolutely it. That side doesn't need to stick out as far. Interesting. Okay, well, that's kind of gonna make this part a pain because this won't work. There we go. That'll get me the room I need. So let's get this in here a little tighter. Remember, don't tighten it down all the way. You just want it snug enough that it's not flopping around. And it's like literally finger tight. And then the fun part. Okay, so in this instance, I did employ a second set of hands. Whether or not I really needed to do that doesn't really matter. Oh, there's a random cat again. Doesn't really matter. In with these things, I'd rather just be a little bit more cautious, especially when you're working right next to a radiator. One slip and you're puncturing that, and you suddenly have a bunch of money to spend in order to fix it. So now, I need to find my long bolt. Oh yeah, right there. Hello, kitty. This one has a really long spacer on it. Mm-hmm. See this?
Because of
the case, the engine case on this side is bigger.
Right.
Okay, so let's do this. Oh, thanks for your help there. That's helpful.
You put the nut on here?
Yeah, it'll start by finger. It's one of those oblong ones.
Yeah.
So you have to do this in a certain order, otherwise the engine will shift on you. It's real good, isn't it? Now, if you didn't have an extra set of hands, you could zip tie this actually forward, or you could use like a bungee cord. That would also work. But in this case, I have Gary over here, so pretty helpful when you have a Gary around. Just like the other side. Tighten this up. Okay, so now you want to make sure you snug these up. Kind of go back and forth between the two, and like I said before, when you use this Torx bit, really press into the bolt so that way it doesn't try and strip on you, which can happen. And especially if you get cheaper Torx bits, you're really in for a bad day. So try not to cheap out too much on these bits. And again, 36 foot-pounds, so not too much. And that's it. So let's take this wrench off here, Gary. We will reattach our radiator, and we're gonna be good to go with some nice frame sliders from Triumph. They look really nice on here. They go well with the lines of the bike, so I think this will do a good job, and fingers crossed, I never have to use them. That's the perfect world. So let's see if that happens, and I'll see you in the next video. For the next one, we're gonna put on some case guards. Again, Triumph accessory, so stay tuned for that next video. And if you wanna see more, hit the link up here, and you can check out other videos that are related to motorcycles. And if you want to see some car stuff, hit the link over here. Until the next time, I'm Sean with a driver's perspective.